Have you ever stopped to think that your own home, the place you're supposed to feel safest, could actually be messing with your health? It's not something we usually consider, right? But the connection between a damp home and how you feel, both physically and mentally, is way stronger than you might imagine. So let's pull back the curtain on this hidden link. Let's just ask it straight up. Is your home making you sick? It's a big question. We're so quick to blame a lingering cough on the season or a low mood on stress. But what if the real culprit is right there with you, hiding in the moisture in your walls, your carpets, and even the air you breathe every day? All right, here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start at the very beginning, the source of the whole problem. Then we'll see what kind of uninvited guests show up because of it. From there, we'll look at the serious toll this takes on your body and, just as importantly, on your mind. And then we get to the good part, how to break this whole vicious cycle. So where does all this trouble begin? Well, it all starts with something totally invisible, too much moisture hanging around in the air. Okay, it's really important to get these two terms straight. High humidity is just that invisible water vapor all around us. But dampness? That's what happens when all that vapor hits a cool surface, like a window or a cold wall, and turns back into liquid water. And that is when the real problems kick off. So what's causing all this humidity? Well, it's usually not just one thing. It could be poor ventilation that traps all the moisture we make just by breathing or cooking. Or you might have structural problems, like a leaky pipe or a bad roof. Heck, even living in a mild, wet climate means the air coming in from outside is already packed with moisture. So once your home is humid and damp, it basically hangs up a giant vacancy sign. And trust me, the guests who check in are the absolute last ones you want crashing at your place. Now look at this. This is fascinating. On one side, you've got house dust mites. On the other, you've got mold. Two totally different things, right? But here's the kicker. They have the exact same weakness. They both need high humidity to live and multiply. They're basically partners in crime, and damp air is the fuel for their whole operation. So let's talk about these house dust mites. You can't see them, but oh, they are there. And here's the gross part. It's not the mites themselves that are the problem. It's their tiny little waste droppings. They're loaded with allergens that, when you breathe them in, can kick your immune system into overdrive and trigger some really nasty allergic reactions, especially if you have asthma. And then you've got mold. It's not just some ugly black spot on the ceiling. No. Mold is an active organism, and it pumps out these microscopic spores into the air. Think of it like a plant shooting out pollen, except these spores are what can cause a whole cascade of respiratory problems. Okay, so the uninvited guests have moved in and made themselves at home. Now what? Well, this is where we start to see the real physical damage it does to our health. Get a load of this quote from the research. It is just staggering. It's saying that for a lot of homes, the amount of dust mite allergens isn't just high enough to trigger an asthma attack in someone who already has it. No, it's high enough to potentially cause asthma in someone who's prone to it. This isn't some rare fringe issue. This is a widespread, invisible threat. Does any of this sound familiar to you? That cough that only seems to show up at night, a constantly runny or blocked nose, wheezing, shortness of breath. These are the real-world symptoms people living in damp homes are dealing with. It's like a constant, low-grade assault on your entire respiratory system. And here's a really crucial point. This isn't just about allergies. When your body is constantly fighting off irritants from mold and mites, its defenses are down. It has fewer resources to fight off actual viruses. That means you're more likely to catch colds, and they're more likely to turn into something worse, like bronchitis. But the story doesn't end with our bodies. There is a huge and often completely ignored psychological weight that comes with living in a damp home. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it's a profound truth. The environment you live in is deeply, deeply connected to your state of mind. When researchers actually asked people what it felt like to live with mold and damp, one word kept coming up over and over again. Not annoying, not a hassle. The word was depressing. There's this feeling of being trapped, of fighting a battle you can't seem to win. And the data backs this up in a huge way. Check this out. Scientists looked at a bunch of studies, and even after they accounted for other things that can affect mental health, like your job, your income, even physical sickness, damp and mold still stood out as a major independent reason for poor mental health in over 75% of the cases. That's incredible. And you can see how it all breaks down. There's the anxiety and depression, the constant stress of trying to fix it. People report feeling tired all the time and having trouble concentrating. And there's this feeling of shame, embarrassment about how your home looks or smells. And always in the back of your mind is that fear. What is this doing to my family's health? Okay, that was a lot, and it can feel pretty bleak. But here's the good news. The same science that shows us the problem also points us directly to the solution. So let's talk about how to take back control. You need to remember this number, 75%, relative humidity, or RH. Once the humidity in your home consistently gets above 75%, you've crossed a line. It's the tipping point where dust mites and mold go from just surviving to absolutely thriving. Now this chart, this is the smoking gun. This is everything. On the bottom, you have the number of winter days the humidity was super high, above 80%. And on the side, you have the level of dust mite allergens they found. Just look at the pattern. It's undeniable. The homes with almost no high humidity days, those blue dots, they have undetectable mite levels. But the homes that had 40, 60, even 90 days of soupy, humid air, those gray and yellow triangles, they are loaded with allergens. It proves it, right there in black and white. You control the humidity, you control the mites. So, how do we break this chain? It's really a three-step attack. 1, you have to control that humidity. Get it down to that sweet spot between 40 and 60%. 2, you gotta ventilate. Open windows, use fans, whatever it takes to get that moist air out. And 3, and this is critical, you have to fix the source. If you've got a leaky pipe, all the fans in the world won't solve the root cause. And here it is. This is the big takeaway, the most important thing to remember from all of this. When you focus on that one single thing, controlling the humidity in your home, you're not just solving one problem. You are knocking out the shared weakness of both dust mites and mold at the exact same time. It's one action for a dual defense. We think so much about the quality of the food we eat and the water we drink. We spend a lot of time and money on it. But we spend the vast majority of our lives breathing the air inside our own homes, and we barely give it a second thought. So maybe it's time we start asking, shouldn't we give the air we breathe at home just as much care and attention?